If you would like to skip this intro and go right into the iceberg stuff, go to this timestamp that should be on your screen right now. Hey everyone, Deltarune here, and yes, it is finally time to go over another Deltarune iceberg. The first thing I want to say is that I apologize this video took like a long time to make. This is mainly because I was really busy in the past few months, and pretty much my schedule is cleared up now. Like I still have a couple things I need to do like every day, but aside from that, I can make YouTube videos a lot like faster now. So I apologize for that because it took way longer than it should have, and I'm sorry to keep you guys in the dark for a long time. You could call this a part 2, but I'm calling it like another Deltarune iceberg explained. I'm gonna be referencing like part 1, which is like the previous one I did, but there really isn't any continuation between the two icebergs, so you don't have to watch the first one to be caught up with the second one, but I'll link it in the description in case you want to check it out. Also, another thing I should say is that basically every single one of these entries were suggested by you guys. I think there's like only a few that were not suggested by you guys, so for the majority of like the time like I show like the entry, it will say suggested by then whoever suggested it. I'll give you an example of what that will look like. Here's an example on screen of what that will look like. That's kind of like what it's going to look like. Also, an additional thing to know is that this iceberg will be a little bit shorter than the last one. The last one had 8 levels compared to this one's 5 levels. And I should also say pretty much every single thing I talk about that has like a source will be linked in the description. And also, I also might make a comment of like all the sources. And also, timestamps will also be in the description and in the comments as well. I'm going to do that, just like the last video. So if you want to go to like a specific entry, if you want, it's in the timestamps. I think that's all I want to talk about for this intro, so let's get started with this iceberg. The original designs of Lancer, Ruddin, the Spade King, and many more. The designs of Lancer, Ruddin, Hathi, Clover, and the Spade King were not made by Toby Fox. Toby actually tweeted to credit the designs to an artist named Genocide, I'm sorry if I butchered that, on Tumblr, and here's what the original artwork by them looks like compared to how these characters actually look like in Deltarune. I'll link the original art in the description if you want to check it out. Anagrams. I'm sure everyone knows this already, that's why it's in the sky level, but Deltarune is an anagram of Undertale, Rousey is an anagram of Azrael, and Chris is an anagram of Frisk aside from the F. This kind of shows how the Deltarune world seems to be a mixed-up world of Undertale, and it's also just a little something I missed in part 1 of this iceberg. Pronunciations. This is mainly a mistake I made in my original Deltarune iceberg, but I basically wanted to cover it as its own entry in this iceberg. The shopkeeper in Deltarune, whose name is spelled S-E-A-M, is actually pronounced as Sham, and for some reason I thought that this was pronounced as Steam because it rhymes with team and beam like the way it's spelled. And for some reason, I also forgot that the first thing that Sham says to you, or one of the first things he says, is that my name is pronounced Sham, so I'm sorry about that. Thanks to all the comments and like other stuff like reminding me because that was kind of stupid of me. And the second thing I pronounced wrong is rules card. It's spelled very weirdly. It's spelled R-O-U-L-X-S-K-A-A-R-D. And I think I said something like Rulix cards, or I don't even know what I said. But I just tried my best to like pronounce it. It's just spelled very weirdly, and yeah, it's pronounced rules card, like a rules card. Quick facts. In this entry, I bundled up a bunch of quick facts and little references in Deltarune that I wanted to talk about, the majority of which were suggested by you guys. The first of these quick facts I would like to talk about is the Rousey blushing Easter egg. If you stand still with Chris and Rousey is directly facing Chris, then Rousey will blush. There's also a couple of quick references with Asgore, the first being how the scene of when Chris enters the flower shop directly mirrors when Frisk first meets Asgore in Undertale, up until when Asgore says, "Oh Chris." It's pretty much the exact same dialogue and for the most part actions before then, with like Asgore sort of turning around, with Chris and Frisk like both sort of walking out like slowly and stuff like that, but it pretty much mirrors it. Asgore's flowers also resemble the same color palette as the 6 human souls, and they're also obviously supposed to look like the golden flowers in Asgore's garden, aside from the changed color to resemble the 6 human souls. And obviously the flower in the middle looks like Flowey, which is what a normal golden flower looks like. In the library, the dog behind the door is obviously referenced to Toby Fox, as it says that the white dog behind the door is making a game, and the annoying dog is pretty much just a personification of Toby Fox in the Undertale/Deltarune universe. When Chris throws their soul into a cage, you can actually still move the soul as it's in the cage. Speaking of the cage, if you interact with it before the ending of the game, it is mentioned that the cage has went through quite a few crashes. This could mean that Chris will bring out their soul in the night, or like doing something with the cage in the night. It's not a one-time thing. There's also a dark stain on the floor near the cage that could possibly be blood or some other like stain for one of these so-called crashes. When Chris and Susie exit the Dark World, if you check your inventory, Chris's sword is now called a pencil, and this supports a very popular theory that the Dark World is just a game. But if you purchase the spooky sword from Chang and then exit the Dark World and check your inventory, the spooky sword turns into the Halloween pencil. Kinda like the Halloween pencil, the ball of junk is an item that Chris has in Hometown after exiting the Dark World. It is supposed to represent the entirety of Chris's Dark World inventory, aside from the equipped items like the sword and the spooky sword. If you want to drop the ball of junk, it is mentioned that Chris really doesn't want to drop it, but if you do it anyways, it is mentioned that Chris's hand starts shaking before they drop the ball of junk, and then it breaks into pieces. Chris also feels a bit bitter after he dropped it. If you decide not to drop the ball of junk when you initially wanted to, Chris feels a feeling of relief. In many of the Dark World is just a game like type theories, they mentioned that since Chris made the Dark World as a childhood game that they would probably play with Azrael, Chris dropping the ball is kind of letting go of that game, letting go of their childhood, and that seems to be really hard for them. This is kind of a weird thing I feel like people miss. We know that Chris's sword is a pencil in the real world, but what is Susie's axe? I've seen a couple of suggestions that the axe could have been something like a comb, since the axe is described to be made of a dragon's mane. This is kind of just a small one, but there's a picture of Chris, Toriel, and Azrael on a fridge in Toriel's house, which doesn't include Asgore for obvious reasons. There's also a couple funny Easter eggs with the toilet in Chris's house. If you flush the toilet 3 times, Toriel will say, "Chris, is everything alright in there?" If the toilet is flushed 6 times, then Toriel says, "Chris, what are you doing? You did not put a bath bomb in the toilet again, did you?" Finally, if you flush the toilet 9 times, Toriel will say, "Chris, if anything bad happens, you are paying for the plumbing bill." Simpsons Reference. I think most of you know this one, but after you exit the Dark World, you can find Alpheus in the alleyway part of Hometown. If you talk to Alpheus about chalk, she'll explain that even though you didn't find the chalk, you should receive an award for it. Alpheus then offers to give you her homemade DVD collection of the Simpsons, which is obviously a reference to the Simpsons. She also describes the Simpsons to be about a middle-class monster family. It has 28 seasons, but you shouldn't watch past the 2nd season. It's the funniest, most quotable show ever, and the show eventually lost focus. That pretty much summarizes The Simpsons today, since the newer seasons are bad, but the earlier ones are really good. Gaster, followers, and Deltarune. There are a couple of characters you can find in Deltarune's overworld that have the exact same design as the Gaster followers in Undertale, except they aren't gray. You can find one of them in the library, and another one in one of the cars where Undying is directing traffic. It is worth noting that in Undertale there are also some non-gray counterparts of the Gaster followers like there are in Deltarune, but specifically the character in the library does not have a normal counterpart in Undertale, but the one in the car does. Noelle's mom is the mayor. This one is pretty well known, but I didn't include the original Iceberg, so I thought I'd talk about it here. It is heavily implied that Noelle's mom is the mayor, and pretty much everyone believes this to be true. After we talk to Noelle's dad Rudy in the hospital, we find Noelle in front of a gate. She explains that she would help Chris with his homework, but she can't since she forgot her house key. If you talk to Noelle about the key, she'll explain that she can't get the key from her mom because her mom does not like it when Noelle bothers her while she is working. If you go to the mayor's office, the secretary will explain that the mayor is busy. If you talk to the bear to the right of the secretary, they will explain that the mayor has 0 charisma, but she works really hard and has a good track record, so she runs unopposed. There's also a pine tree in the room which connects to how Noelle and her dad Rudy have the last name Holiday. And their names Noelle and Rudy as in Rudolph, are connected to Christmas, especially because Noelle and Rudy are reindeer. So many people think that since Noelle says her mom doesn't like being disrupted at work, and that the secretary says the mayor is busy working, that the mayor is Noelle's mother, especially because of the connections to Christmas, the hard worker personality I described, and the fact that Noelle's house is locked by a gate, and it's even a bit distant from the town, kind of like a mayor's estate, or it's just because Noelle's family is rich through her mom being the mayor. Noelle has a crush on Susie. This is a short one, but it's heavily hinted at that Noelle has a crush on Susie. This is actually first shown in the classroom when Noelle tells Alpheus about a box of chalk in the supply closet, and she offers that she and Susie should go get it, although Alpheus instead suggests that Chris and Susie should go get it. Also, if you talk to Noelle right before you leave the classroom, she reassures Chris that Susie can't be that bad, and if you talk to Noelle right after that, she asks you to say hi to Susie for her. Noelle liking Susie is once again shown when Noelle is talking to her dad Rudy in the hospital. The first thing we see when we enter is Noelle saying, "Ah, Dad, I can't just say that to her. Oh my god, I die. I literally die." We basically get confirmation that Noelle is talking about a person she likes, because Rudy then explains how he first met Noelle's mother. And it's also the fact that Noelle is talking about a she. After you exit the hospital, you can talk to Noelle about Susie at the gate. She'll ask you what Susie is like. If you say she's nice, she'll be shocked and she'll say that you should try to talk to her. If you say ... she basically keeps asking you questions about her, and after she finishes asking those questions, she says in brackets, "I blew it, didn't I?" Which basically tells me that she likes her, and she blew her chance trying to get to know Susie through Chris telling her about Susie. If you say Susie is terrible, Noelle feels bad for you since you got smashed into a locker. Noelle mentions that it might take someone special to get to know Susie, and then Noelle actually offers for you to switch partners with her so they don't get smashed into lockers anymore, before saying in brackets that you should have rephrased that because that kind of just sounds weird. Finally, if you tell Noelle Susie eats chalk, she will not believe you, and when she realizes that you're telling the truth, she asks Chris about what type of chocolate Susie likes, and if she likes a thin or thick kind. She then says in brackets, "Wait, maybe making her a lunchbox full of chocolate is stupid." I honestly think this is enough proof to say that Noelle has a crush on Susie. I guess this will also be similar to the Undying and Alpheus relationship in Undertale, since Alpheus and Noelle are nervous to admit their feelings, and Undying and Susie both seem to be the leader and aggressive type. Giygas In The Intro. The music for Deltarune's intro, which is called Another Hymn, actually resembles the track Giygas' Intimidation from Earthbound. I'll play the two tracks for you to see if you can catch those similar sounding robotic noises in each of these themes. I see Pezza in Undertale. When Sans gives us a puzzle to solve in Undertale, he gives us a word search puzzle called Monster Kids Word Search that features a character named Ice. Ice says, "Hey kids, can you help me solve this puzzle?" And in Deltarune there's a restaurant called Ice's Pizzeria. This word search could easily be the kids menu for Ice's Pizzeria, since why would there just be a random word search like that in Undertale, without Ice really being in Undertale? It's kind of weird that Sans got this puzzle, so maybe he brought it from Deltarune's world. More on that later. Jevil's Carousel in real life. In the Deltarune game files, there's a picture that's supposed to be Jevil's Carousel, although it is obviously not actually what it looks like in the game. This picture looks like a carousel you can find in real life, but the picture is black and white for some reason. A user on Reddit actually figured out what this carousel was. A user on Reddit figured out that this carousel looked exactly like a carousel called the Galloper Carousel at a traveling fair in Newcastle called the Hoppings. I'll link the video and the images that I found in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. Who is Dez? Dez is a character mentioned only twice in Deltarune, once by Rudy and once by Noelle. For Rudy, if you check the angel doll in the hospital, he says, "That angel?" Noelle and Dez made it in the youth group. For Noelle, if you tell her that Susie eats chalk, she says, "Wait, you're teasing me, aren't you, Chris? Like when you told me that Icy is real and eats kids, so Dez smacked you with a wiffle bat until you stopped lying." I actually found a very interesting Reddit post that theorized who Dez really is. The poster talked about how we don't really know the gender of Dez from these lines, but since Dez hit Chris with a wiffle bat, that might show that Dez might be some sort of protective figure to Noelle, which might mean that Dez is older or around the same age as Noelle. They most likely aren't classmates, as we see 9 tables and 9 students in the room, so it is most likely that Dez is older or younger than Noelle, but probably older because of this protective figure role that Dez seems to have. Dez could be Noelle's friend, but sibling just seems more accurate with the proof that this poster found. They use the proof of the Undertale alarm clock winter dialogue, which if you didn't know, are canon little dialogues that take place after Undertale's multiple different endings, the majority of which take place after the true pacifist ending. These dialogues are updated every year and they are on the official Undertale website, so they are pretty much canon. The 2020 dialogue actually has some proof that Dez could be Noelle's sibling. Asgore's 2020 dialogue says, "His daughters get to grow up in the sunlight," while referring to Rudy. This is a post-truth pacifist timeline, as you can tell with the sunlight line. Asgore says daughters like being plural. This means that Noelle has a sister in this post-pacifist timeline, or sisters in this post-pacifist timeline. Asgore also says that the youngest one has such a kind face. "I think she will make many new friends." The younger daughter is most likely Noelle, especially if we take Rudy's line into account about Noelle, in which he says, Smart, kind, sweet. I couldn't ask for a better daughter. Rudy and Asgore's descriptions of Noelle are both very similar, with both of them mentioning that she is kind. We should also look at the second part of Asgore's description of Noelle, where he talks about how she thinks she will make many new friends. One of Toby Fox's Deltarune Chapter 2 teaser tweets says, "I hope you can just be friends with everyone someday," while using the song Lost Girl in the video he sent with that tweet. That video is like basically of Noelle in the Dark World, and Lost Girl is Noelle's theme, revealed to be in Deltarune Chapter 2. So Des is most likely Noelle's older sister. It was also worth mentioning that Azrael and Chris also made Angel Doll in the youth group like Des and Noelle did, which might mean that Des and Noelle have the same relationship as Azrael and Chris. Des's name also probably references the month of December, like how the other members of the Holiday family like Noelle and Rudy have names referencing Christmas, with Noelle's name being like a pretty obvious reference to Christmas, and Rudy as in Rudolph also being a pretty obvious reference to Christmas. Des is also most likely not in hometown, since Noelle probably asked Des for help to get into getting into her house instead of just being stuck in front of the gate like when we see her. Maybe Des could be off at the same university as Azrael. It's also worth noting that the Holiday family as a whole will probably play a bigger role in Deltarune Chapter 2, through Noelle joining Chris and Susie in the Dark World because of the details that Toby Fox gave to us about Deltarune Chapter 2. The bigger role of the Holiday family in the future is also shown and pretty much foreshadowed in the intro of Deltarune. If you name the creator Chris, Susie, or Noelle, the voice says you are about to meet someone really, really wonderful. Also, on a quick little side note, just to end things off, Des having a wiffle bat is quite obviously a reference to Ness from Earthbound, who is known to have a bat, and the fact that their names are so similar is just a D instead of an N at the start. Deltarune's debug mode. Deltarune's debug mode has many interesting features, including a number at the top left hand corner which shows the frames per second, or FPS, that the game is running at. It can be increased by pressing P, which makes the game run a lot faster, and it can be decreased by pressing O, which basically just makes the game move very, very slowly. The highest FPS you can get is 60 FPS, and the lowest FPS you can get is 3. You can also press S, which allows you to save almost anywhere in the game, and pressing Z shows this little red rectangle line kind of showing the range of you pressing Z, if that makes sense. Pressing R restarts the game, and pressing L reloads your last save. If you press C while reading any text, you can instantly skip the line of text. And if you mash it, you can basically just skip text like really, really fast. You can actually warp to random rooms in Deltarune using the debug mode by holding W, and then pressing any of the number keys that are 1 through 6. You can also hold D and then press any of the number keys that are 3 through 9. And that allows you to warp to rooms near the midpoint of the game. Pressing the insert key warps you to the previous room according to Deltarune's code, and pressing the delete key moves you to the next room according to the code. You can also get to many places in Deltarune where you should be, like Chris being in hometown while they still have the Dark World design. If you save by pressing S during a scripted cutscene like the rules card cutscenes, you can actually move Chris around while the cutscene keeps playing. When you do this, the text acts very weirdly, and it kind of looks like what happens to the text when you do the punch card skip in Undertale. I'm sure most of you at least knew a little bit about the debug room since it's like fairly popular. I feel like most people know at least a little bit about it, like I just said. But I just put it a bit lower in the iceberg because there's so many cool little things you can do it, and the whole punch card skip reference. I thought it was neat. Deltarune 2015. This refers to how the Deltarune website actually existed since sometime in 2015, which is the time the Undertale released. I don't know if this was the first finding of this, but I found a Reddit post of a user discussing their findings about the Deltarune website. Using the Wayback Machine, it was discovered that the first archive of the website itself was in July 2016. It only contained one image, which was called deltarune.com/shim.png. The first archive of this image dates back to December 2015, where the image contained Wingding's text, which translates to, "This next experiment seems very, very interesting," in all capital letters. This is taken directly out of entry number 17 in Undertale, and also connects back to the tweets that Toby Fox made, which also has a very, very interesting line in one of the tweets. The image was archived again a year later in December 2016, with the Wingding's text now being a lot harder to see, and with the Wingding's text also changing to now translate to, "Three heroes appeared to banish the angels' heaven." This obviously ties directly back to the prophecy of Deltarune, where the three heroes need to banish the angels' heaven. I also saw another user link some tweets from Toby Fox around the time of Undertale's release. They could already be hinting at Deltarune. Toby thanks everyone for the success of Undertale, and he talks about how something has left him feeling unsettled. A burning, inexplicable feeling, you could say. Its very nature is shrouded in darkness. Mainly the last tweet about the darkness is a direct hint to Deltarune and its Dark World. It can also be a reference to Gaster's darker yet darker line from entry number 17. April 2012. This is the name of a song in Deltarune, but it's very significant because this is the time where Toby first thought of and wrote scripts for Deltarune. Toby actually tweeted an early script version what seems to be dialogue of Jevil before he fights you, and what also seems to be an early script of Lancer talking to his dad, the king. These files have the date of May 2nd, 2012, but there are files below that are called Lancer tests, and they're dated April 26th, 2012, tying it back to the song April 2012. Toby also showed some other files in the same tweet that are made in 2013, and they involve Susie, which is pretty neat. Sans' origins. This is probably one of the main things I missed in the original Deltarune Iceberg, so I'm going to talk about it here. Sans' origins was a very interesting mystery in Undertale, with many theories like Sans being some sort of time traveler. We do know for sure that Sans does not originate Undertale, as the shopkeeper in Snowdin talks about how they just showed up one day and asserted themselves. She's referring to Sans and Papyrus with that. Sans also knows about timelines as shown when you fight him in the Genocide run. There's also a couple things in Undertale that make a lot more sense with Deltarune coming out and vice versa. For example, the Ice Junior Jumble that I talked about earlier is most definitely from the Deltarune world, since Ice is nowhere to be seen in Undertale, but he is in Deltarune. And there's also the fact of the picture in Sans' workshop that changes after you talk to Clam Girl about Susie. The picture changes and now shows 3 smiling people that you don't recognize, with the words "Don't forget" written in lowercase. This obviously being a reference to the song Don't Forget from Deltarune, and the 3 smiling people most likely being Chris, Susie, and Rousey. Although Rousey could be placed with Noelle, or Lancer, we don't know. In Deltarune you can also see Grillbees, but the Grillbee is blocked out and replaced with Sans. It looks directly ripped from Undertale aside from the text being blocked out. Sans and Papyrus' house, which is right beside Grillbees, also looks directly ripped from Undertale. The warp doors in the Dark World also have the exact same model as Sans' door in Undertale, which could be a hint at the fact that Sans can travel between worlds. That is probably the reason why Sans can bring stuff like the Don't Forget picture and the Icy word search to the Undertale world from the Deltarune world. Maybe Sans can also bring larger structures like his house or Grillbees because of his teleportation powers as shown in Undertale. Who knows, honestly, it's just really interesting to speculate regardless. Temmie Chang's games, references, and connections to Deltarune. Temmie Chang, as most of you know, helped Toby with the character art in Undertale, and she is also the main artist for Deltarune. Obviously, the character Temmie, who is in Undertale and Deltarune, is a reference to her. Chris, Susie, and Rousey are referencing her game called Dweller's Empty Path. It is a short game made in RPG Maker, and they are known as the trio in that game. The trio are shown to be looking for a fountain, like how Chris, Susie, and Rousey are looking for a fountain in Deltarune. Their facial sprites pretty much look like them in Deltarune, and their names are actually never given in the game, but in the game files it suggests that their names are Chris, Susie, and Larius. Chris and Susie kind of just sound like different versions of Chris and Susie, but Larius is an anagram of Rousey, which is in turn an anagram for Azrael. Temmie Chang also made another game in RPG Maker called Escape Chasm. There's a character in that game called Zera, who is a demon from another world. Zera is also in Dweller's Empty Path as the main antagonist, and he's described as a handsome demon man, but he first appears in Escape Chasm. In the library in Hometown, you can see Temmie reading a book, and if you interact with Temmie, she says, "Gotta go to college, so Tem stubby, hard." And then in brackets it says, she's reading a comic book of hot demon guys. This is an obvious reference to Zera since he is described as a hot demon, and Temmie is the one who is specifically reading the book. There's also a Reddit post theory that I like to talk about that suggests that Dweller's Empty Path and Escape Chasm take place in the Dark World of Deltarune, meaning that these 2 games are connected to Deltarune and they all take place in the same universe, but specifically the Dark World. The poster describes a lot of connection between the 2 games and Deltarune, and presents them as evidence. Starting off with Escape Chasm, the poster mentions that the drawings made by the main character in the game, who is called Lonely Girl, and a doll of a character named Yoki, mirror the unused classroom in Deltarune. Lonely Girl's appearance also drastically shifted when she entered the new world, theorized to be the same as the Dark World. This is compared to how both Chris and Susie's appearances changed when they entered the Dark World. They also mentioned the Chris, Susie, and Rousey reference in Dweller's Empty Path as evidence for this theory. This theory also goes into more evidence for something else being connected to Deltarune. This time it's Cucumber Quest, which is an adventure webcomic, and I will talk about that part in Cucumber Quest is in the same world as Deltarune. As the theory continues, the poster now tries to connect the Deltarune world to Cucumber Quest, which is an adventure web series as I already previously mentioned. They explain that Toby Fox actually composed songs for the soundtrack of the series. Kinda like how Toby Fox composed songs for Homestuck, Toby specifically made a theme for the main villain in the series, named Nightmare Knight. The poster suggests that the mysterious knight that the king is working for is actually Nightmare Knight himself. In Cucumber Quest, Nightmare Knight is awakened every 5,000 years by some evil person who wants to take over the world, but they usually end up serving Nightmare Knight instead. The poster suggests that the king awakened Nightmare Knight, which honestly kinda makes sense since the king seems to want to eradicate Lighteners and be the sole ruler of the Dark World, and which he succeeded in being the sole ruler of the Dark World since the other 3 kings are imprisoned in the basement of Card Castle. The poster also suggests that Nightmare Knight is the one that made Jevil go crazy. This is because Nightmare Knight himself once said that he played the part as an evil overlord for acceptance, and this relates to Jevil's perspective about the Deltarune world being just a game and everyone is playing their part, which is what Chang mentions when they talk to you about Jevil. The poster also talks about how the Dark World isn't entirely real, and that the Dark World is the same as Dreamside, which is the world from Cucumber Quest. That one person in Cucumber Quest has to be a real person, like how Chris and Susie are real since they came from the real world, but Rousey and Lancer aren't because they are from the Dark World. In Cucumber Quest, there isn't a character that's seen entering like the new world, like how we see Chris and Susie enter the Dark World. So they try to figure out who this character, like the one real character, could be. They suggest 4 characters: Cordelia, Caboodle, Steve, and Gary, and they give all the evidence for that. But I'm not going to talk about that specific part of the theory because I am not like a giant expert on Cucumber Quest, and I mainly just want to discuss the connection that this game has with Deltarune. But basically this is the end of the theory. Really the only thing left they have like to say is just evidence for which one of those characters is real. Source code secrets in the Deltarune website. The source code of the Deltarune website has a couple fun secret messages. One of the messages is, "Hello from new server," which probably just means that Toby switched hosts for the server, and that's probably just it. Toby also knows by now that people are going to try to find as much secrets as they can about knowing more about Undertale and Deltarune. Since people are just really excited for what's like coming next with Deltarune, they want to know right now. Another secret message is, "Dear armchair cryptographers, I know this isn't secure, but it's fast and all I care about is hot link protection so people don't immediately eat the bandwidth bill in like an hour or something." I'm not that tech savvy, but I'm pretty sure like Toby's just saying that like this like the server has like hot link protection, like it's like protected if someone tried to hack it. But let me know in the comments since I'm not that big of a technology expert. Another secret message is, "Sorry mobile people, we don't want you wasting bandwidth by downloading something you can't use." And I'm pretty sure this message is poking fun that mobile users can't download many things like console or PC users can. Something like Deltarune itself, because Deltarune is not available for mobile, and you can't use it, which is basically what that is saying. Unused Rooms. Unlike Undertale's many unused rooms, there are only 3 unused rooms in Deltarune that can actually be loaded. And they're all unfortunately pitch black rooms. However, we can guess what these rooms could have been used for if we check the names of the rooms. The first room is called room_Tora room, and is actually found near the other rooms in Chris's house, so it's most likely that this room would have been Toriel's bedroom. The second unused room is called room_town_northwest. This was most likely supposed to be an area beyond the gate blocking the northwest part of Hometown. This is actually where Noelle lives, like beyond like the gate. So it probably would have been an area outside Noelle's house or her actual house. The third and final unused room is called room_town_apartments, and this was definitely supposed to be used for a room in one of the apartments in Hometown. It also maybe could have been used for all the apartments that are in Hometown, because there's multiple apartments. And it's because that this unused room is called room_town_apartments, not room_town_apartment. Everyman. If you didn't know, the Everyman is a strange character who appears as Reaper Bird's main attack in the True Lab of Undertale. Everyman appears in all 3 of Reaper Bird's attacks, the first attack being Everyman swarmed by butterflies, with Everyman being in a lot of pain because of the butterflies. The only way you can get hit in this attack is running into the butterflies on purpose. The second attack is the Everyman walking toward you, with all the butterflies still swarming him, and some of the butterflies trying to attack you. The third attack is Everyman shooting many heads at you. On Undertale's game files, Everyman is actually referred to as Strange Man, but a tweet from Toby Fox confirms that Strange Man is actually called Everyman. Everyman is actually referenced a couple of times in Deltarune. The first being in a rare instance of one of Jevil's attacks, and the second one is graffiti of the Everyman in the alleyway in Hometown, where Alpheus is. Many people think that the Everyman will be an important character in the future of Deltarune in the same vein as Gaster. In fact, many people believe that Everyman and Gaster are actually connected. They are both involved somewhat in the True Lab, with entry number 17 being Gaster's entry in the True Lab, and as said previously, Everyman appearing as the Reaper Bird's main attack in the True Lab. This theory also talks about how the Amalgamate Memory Head has an attack that looks like the Mystery Man sprite, which many people believe to be Gaster, although it doesn't look exactly like it, it just kinda looks like it. Some people may not see the similarities, I kinda do, This is obviously a connection since Everyman, like I keep saying, is an attack from the Reaper Bird amalgamate. This theory also talks about that every character that is called something man in the Undertale game files is connected to Gaster and or the Everyman, aside from a snowman, but like what else are you gonna name a literal snowman in the game files? Example being Mystery Man, which is like the Gaster sprite, which I already kind of talked about, and Riverman being River Person, who references Gaster. This Everyman theory also suggests that Everyman is the knight. This theory talks about how every time a character is referring to the knight and or Jevil, they use the word strange, which if you remember, Strange Man is what Everyman is called in the game files of Undertale. Also, many people think that, and it's heavily implied, that the knight is a strange someone that changed Jevil, which is why I also bundle in Jevil here with the knight, with the whole like strange talk stuff. This theory also suggests that King may have a reference to Everyman when you defeat him. This reference is when the king is defeated, he releases his cape and it flies away like a butterfly, which actually could be a reference to Everyman and his connection to butterflies. Mainly this could be a reference because it's very strange that the king like released his cape like a butterfly. It's just kind of weird that like an intimidating guy would just like do that. So it could very well be a reference to Everyman and his connection to butterflies. I'll link this theory in the description since it's very interesting to me and it brings up so many good points, though I don't think Everyman is the knight. Chara and Gaster in Japanese. Before I start with this one, I would like to say thank you to William Merwin from the comments on my original Deltarune Iceberg for suggesting that I'll take a look at this. I'd also like to say that since we were talking about Japanese, a language I'm not familiar with at all, I apologize if I mispronounce anything or if I misinterpret anything. In the intro to Deltarune, many people theorize the voice telling you to make your vessel is Gaster, while the person who says will now be discarded is Chara. I talked about that specific theory in my original Deltarune Iceberg, but I want to talk about what this scene looks like in Japanese. This Tumblr post explains that in the English version, the change in the person who is talking is shown through the voice changing from all capital letters to lowercase letters. We all know that. But the difference is actually more apparent in Japanese. The poster explains that the voice who people think is Gaster speaks in kanji and katakana, which they say is very odd. However, the second voice speaks in kanji and hiragana. Hiragana is how you normally write in Japanese. The poster also says it is worth noting that in the Japanese translation of Undertale and in the Light World of Deltarune, kanji is barely used, and in the text from Undertale and the Light World of Deltarune is mainly in hiragana and katakana. This means that these two voices both using kanji is very strange and must mean that they are both important in some way. However, the poster mentions that there's more proof that the voices are different. The first voice uses the second person pronoun anata, which is a formal pronoun, which is also pretty fitting for the first voice since many people think this voice is Gaster. And whenever we hear Gaster speak, he seems very polite when he speaks. However, when the second voice says your name is, they use a much more informal pronoun omai. Gaster overall speaks very formally and politely through this whole intro, adding many sentences with disu and adding all of his requests to you with kudasai, which means please. The second speaker speaks informally with dakanai rather than Gaster's dikimasu. The poster then mentions the connection of the second voice being overall informal and its use of kanji, and them speaking to you on a black background. They connect them to Chara, since they speak to you on a black background in the same informal way, and also using kanji at the end of the Genocide route in Undertale when you talk with Chara. This honestly just further supports the theory that in the Deltarune intro, Gaster is the first voice that talks to you and Chara is the second voice that talks to you. Gaster talks to you at the end of the Genocide run. I thought I put this entry at the bottom of the iceberg since I feel like most of you will probably not know about this theory, but it is a very interesting theory and it's probably the most interesting thing to me in this iceberg. I first want to thank Lucas Paradox in my stream chat for suggesting this video to me, and I thought it would make a great addition to this iceberg, so thank you, Lucas. This is a theory made by the YouTuber Sybil's GD, and honestly holds a lot of merit to me. He starts off the theory talking about Gaster himself and that he knows about the Deltarune world through Clam Girl, which we learn to be a Gaster follower. She tells you about Susie, who is obviously a character in Deltarune. The theory truly starts when Sybil's talked about what happens at the end of the Genocide run. Obviously, we all know that Chara kills us, but if you wait for exactly 10 minutes, a voice will talk to you explaining it can restore the world in which Chara just destroyed. However, this mysterious voice then tells you that they can only restore the world if you give them your soul. Most people think that this voice is Chara, but Sybil suggests that it is Gaster who's talking to us here. Sybil also mentions that we aren't Frisk, we just take control of him from when the game starts to when the game ends. We don't see Chris's life when he's a child before he falls down into the underground, and we don't see what happens after, like the true faster setting, for example. He makes a claim that the mysterious voice at the end of the Genocide run isn't taking Frisk's soul. they are actually taking the soul of you as the player. He gives the proof that this mysterious voice talking to is Gaster because they have the same tone of voice as like entry number 17, the voice from the Undertale Twitter account, and the voice at the start of Deltarune. He also counter-argues that this voice is Chara by talking about how this voice says interesting, which is what Gaster likes to say as shown in entry number 17 and the other stuff I already mentioned. Instead of saying interesting, when Chara first talks to us, they say how curious, not interesting, like this voice says. Jevil also mentions that it would make no sense at all for Chara to restore the world they worked so hard to destroy, which makes sense. He talks about how that Gaster took your soul as the player and put it inside of Chris. And that is why you can only play as Frisk and Chris. Chris is kind of like the experiment that Gaster is working on. Chris actually doesn't realize you have control of him until after you exit the Dark World. This is why Chris doesn't recognize that he signed the flowers to Rudy, and it's why you can say great to see you again to Sans. And this is exactly why Chris rips out your soul at the end of Deltarune, because they want to regain control of themselves. Jevil explains that Deltarune is a world where the human and monster war never happened. That is why Asgore isn't the king, and it's also why Undying has both of her eyes. The monsters would also have no need for royal scientists, and this in turn means that Gaster never fell into his own creation, since there was no creation. He explains that there are two Gasters, the one that's scattered across time and space, the Undertale one basically, and the one in Deltarune who is in the bunker. Jevil also makes a claim which many people have said before, that Gaster is the knight. However, he gives some very different evidence to show why Gaster is the knight. In Undertale, there's an unused room with a strange figure inside of it. If you talk to it, it says redacted and wingdings. This figure is known as redacted. If you leave the room, it takes you to the sound test room where you can listen to Gaster's theme. The figure itself is known as redacted, like I just said, and some people think that this figure could be Gaster, as well as a more popular figure that is more commonly referred to as what Gaster looks like, that figure being the Mystery Man. This redacted figure actually appears in another unused room in Undertale, with a horse stable that is locked and you need a key. You can unlock the horse stable by finding the key in a nearby trash can, and when it is unlocked, the same figure from before is in the horse stable, and it once again says redacted and wingdings. Jevil says that this is proof of Gaster being knight because in chess, a knight is represented by a horse, and Gaster is in a horse stable. Jevil also suggests the fact that the reason why Gaster has two designs, those being the Mystery Man and the redacted figure, or two forms I guess, is because one of these forms is how Gaster looks in the Dark World, and the other one is what it looks like normally. Jevil's guess is that the Mystery Man figure is Gaster's normal form, and the redacted figure is what Gaster looks like in the Dark World, which makes sense. The video for this theory will obviously be in the description as well, and I would honestly personally recommend checking out Jevil GD's channel as a whole, since it honestly has some really interesting theories about Undertale and Deltarune, and more I guess. Alright, that's the end of the second Deltarune Iceberg I've made, or another Deltarune Iceberg as I call it in the title. This is sort of part 2 of the first one I made, but I don't really call it part 2 because there's no continuation about it. I said that in the intro. I want to thank all of you for watching. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun to make, and even though it took a while, and I'm sorry for that again. Yeah, this is a lot of fun to make. I really like making these type of videos. If you're new to my channel, I just like to talk about indie and Nintendo games. Not only Deltarune and Undertale, it's just Deltarune and Undertale are my favorite indie games, so I like to talk about those the most. But I just like to talk about Nintendo and indie games because I like them a lot. Comment down below what you'd like me to do next, rather just an iceberg, or maybe talking about a big theory or something like that. Or if you want me to do some other stuff. I have an idea of something I want to do that's a little bit different from what I usually do, but it still involves Undertale and Deltarune. But yeah, just comment down below what you'd like me to do. But like I just said, I usually like to talk about indie and Nintendo games. So if you have any idea on those topics, just comment down below. I'd love to hear it. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.